Amelia stood beside the silent hospital bed and squeezed her husband Jacob's cold hand, hoping the final beeps would turn into a joke he could laugh about. But the monitors only hummed like sleepy machines, and the overhead lights flickered softly like shy stars. The doctor spoke in a gentle voice, saying Jacob had slipped away peacefully during the night, and Amelia felt her knees weaken as if the floor had turned into melting wax beneath her shoes. She stared at the thin gold ring on her finger, twisting it back and forth, remembering the day Jacob surprised her with it under the oak tree where they first met in high school. Outside the window, dawn painted the sky with orange and pink, yet the colors felt dull to Amelia, because her world had suddenly switched to gray, even though birds chirped with careless cheer just outside the glass. She called Jacob's parents Mr. and Mrs. Clark, choking on her words, and they told her they would handle everything so she could rest, which sounded kind at first. At the funeral home 2 days later, Mrs. Clark hugged Amelia with stiff arms, cold perfume pressing against Amelia's cheek, while Mr. Clark spoke to the director in hushed, hurried tones, their heels clicking on the tile like tiny hammers. The service overflowed with Jacob's coworkers and friends, and everyone shared stories about his goofy jokes, his handmade birthday cards, and how he could fix anything with duct tape and a grin, almost like a lighthouse in a sudden fog. Amelia smiled politely, though her heart felt like a broken puzzle missing its middle piece, and the ring on her finger became the only part of Jacob she could still touch. After the burial, the Clarks invited Amelia to stay at their big stone house, saying she should not be alone, but she chose to go back to the small cottage she and Jacob had rented near the lake, the place where laughter once echoed off the walls. The cottage smelled like coffee grounds and pine planks, and Jacob's toolbox sat open on the table, each screwdriver lined up like little soldiers waiting for orders. Amelia made tea and sat in Jacob's worn blue armchair, reading the note he left on the fridge a week before, which said, "Love you more than chocolate chip pancakes." And that simple line made her cry again, proof that love could sound silly and still be strong. The next morning, a letter arrived from the Clark's lawyer, saying they wished to gather Jacob's belongings to keep them safe, including his guitar, his photo albums, and the cottage lease papers, addressed with icy formality that felt nothing like family. Amelia frowned at the words, feeling a warning bell ring inside her head, yet she told herself they were still grieving and probably did not think about how the letter sounded. She called the lawyer to ask for time, but he said politely that Mr. Clark planned to come by later that afternoon with movers, so Amelia tidied the living room, wiping her eyes with every other swipe, as if neat cushions could guard a heart from storms. When the Clarks arrived, they did not step into the cottage with quiet respect. Instead, they pointed at things, making lists on clipboards, while the movers packed boxes like they were racing a clock. Amelia watched as Jacob's favorite baseball cap, the one with the faded team logo, disappeared into a crate, and she clenched her hands until her nails marked her palm, unnoticed by anyone but her. She tried to say the cottage was their shared home, but Mrs. Clark said the lease was in Jacob's name, meaning the family estate had rights to it now, which made Amelia feel like she was being erased page by page. The words family estate sounded heavy, like a metal gate slamming shut, and Amelia's voice felt caught behind it, small and useless, echoing long after. Mr. Clark pointed to the wedding album on the shelf and told the mover to wrap it carefully because it was an important family record, ignoring Amelia's soft protest that those photos were her memories too. The movers carried the boxes outside, passing by the garden Jacob had planted with blueberry bushes and bright marigolds, and one man even stepped on a bloom without noticing, petals falling like tiny teardrops. Finally, Mrs. Clark asked to see the ring, saying they would store it with the family heirlooms until Amelia felt ready to move forward. But Amelia tucked her hand behind her back, a suggestion that felt like an order covered in silk. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that makes ears ring, and Amelia's heart pounded like a drum in an empty hall. She said the ring was hers by love and by law, yet Mrs. Clark argued that Jacob had borrowed money from the family trust to buy it, so it was technically an asset of the estate, shining proof of the love they had built together. Amelia remembered Jacob working extra shifts at the hardware store to save for the ring, selling his old comic book collection, and skipping lunch for months, and her cheeks burned at the lie. Mr. Clark's voice grew firm, telling Amelia they did not want conflict but would get a court order if necessary, and the movers paused, waiting for the verdict like referees at a game. Amelia took a long breath, feeling tears blur her vision, but she refused to slide the ring off, even as her hand trembled. Mrs. Clark sighed, looking at Amelia as if she were a stubborn child, then signaled the movers to continue with the furniture. They took Jacob's rocking chair, the quilt his grandmother stitched, and the framed poster of his favorite movie, leaving blank spots on the walls that looked like missing teeth. After they left, The cottage echoed emptily, and Amelia sat on the floor amid dust circles where tables once stood, clutching the ring like a tiny shield. She felt shaken, but a small spark lit inside her, the kind of spark that starts campfires and stories of bravery, warming her soul. Amelia opened Jacob's laptop, which the movers had missed because it was tucked under the couch cushion, and searched for rental agreements, bank statements, and any emails that proved how they had shared every bill. She found receipts, messages, and photos showing how both their names were on almost everything, and she printed copies, stacking the papers like cards in a secret deck. Then she called her friend Rosa, who worked at the local legal aid center, and asked if she could come over after work to talk about rights and estates in plain words. Rosa arrived at the pizza and 2 sodas, saying comfort food makes hard talks easier, and they spread the documents across the coffee table. Rosa explained that courts care about fair division, and a surviving spouse has strong claims, especially when a marriage license, joint bills, and witness statements prove partnership. Amelia listened, nibbling the crust, feeling hope rise like sunrise light creeping over mountains, slow but certain. Rosa suggested filing an injunction to stop the Clarks from selling or hiding Jacob's belongings until a judge could review the evidence, and Amelia nodded with new determination. They drafted a simple statement, using clear language, and Rosa promised to file it first thing in the morning, reminding Amelia that truth has weight even when grief makes shoulders ache. Before Rosa left, she squeezed Amelia's hand and said the ring on that finger told a story no estate inventory could erase, and Amelia smiled for the first time in days. That night, Amelia placed the ring on Jacob's pillow beside her, whispered good night, and vowed to protect the life they built together, one brave. The sun rose on the cottage with a shy glow, and Amelia woke to birds tapping the window as though cheering her fresh resolve, yet her stomach fluttered like a nervous kite in gusty air because court form still felt like a maze, and the memory of Jacob laughing at her messy morning hair drifted through her mind like a comforting breeze. She brewed oatmeal and honey tea, whispering every step out loud so the quiet would not swallow her courage, and she hummed Jacob's favorite tune between sips, a catchy whistle from an old cartoon they both loved. While she ate, she reread Rosa's late-night notes that compare the estate laws to playground rules, clear enough that even their 6th-grade neighbor Jonas could understand. The note said a judge can act fast if one player tries to grab all the marbles before the game ends, and Amelia pictured Mr. Clark scooping Jacob's life into boxes like greedy handfuls of shiny stones. After breakfast, she gathered her papers, but the stacks slipped and scattered like autumn leaves across the floor, reminding her that brave journeys often start with clumsy steps. She laughed at the mess because Jacob used to say, "Spilled pages are just stories eager to run," and that memory felt like a soft hand on her shoulder, urging her on. At 9 o'clock, Rosa returned wearing sneakers and determination, declaring they would reach the courthouse before the lunch bell, the same way kids hurry to class to keep perfect attendance. They climbed into Rosa's tiny blue car, which coughed and rattled yet kept moving, and Amelia thanked it as if the engine were a faithful dog wagging its tail. On Main Street, they passed the bakery where Amelia and Jacob had bought cinnamon rolls for Saturday picnics, and the sugary smell floated through the cracked window like a sweet reminder of why she fought. The courthouse steps loomed tall, carved from gray stone, but Rosa said to imagine them as giant building blocks stacked by friendly giants, so each step felt less scary, and the courtyard fountain splashed softly nearby, sending tiny rainbows into the air whenever sunlight struck the water. Inside, echoes bounced off the marble walls, making Amelia's footsteps sound brave even when her heartbeat drummed faster than marching band snares, and a faint lemonade scent from the snack cart drifted through the atrium, reminding Amelia of summer fairs. Rosa guided her to the clerk's desk, where a kindly woman with silver glasses handed them an emergency injunction packet thicker than a phone book. Amelia's eyes widened, but Rosa tapped the first page and said, "One box at a time," like unpacking after a move, and Amelia nodded, breathing easier. They sat at a wooden bench, filling blanks with neat letters, and Rosa explained tricky words using plain examples about sharing birthday cake fairly. Amelia wrote statements describing how she and Jacob split rent, cooked dinners together, and planned a future with equal dreams, each sentence like a brick in a sturdy wall. She attached photos of utility bills, grocery receipts, and the lease where both names glowed in bold ink, evidence shining brighter than any flashlight. When she reached the part about the wedding ring, her pen paused, because the ring was not just gold but a circle of promises, and she scribbled that truth even though her eyes watered. Rosa reviewed the packet, checking commas like a teacher grading essays, then declared it ready for filing. The clerk stamped the papers with a loud thunk that echoed like a gavel, and Amelia felt the sound travel up her spine like warm lightning. Next, the clerk arranged a same-day hearing, explaining a judge would listen at 2 o'clock, so Amelia had 3 hours to prepare her voice. She and Rosa walked to the park across the street, sitting on a bench where squirrels darted for crumbs, and they practiced Amelia's statement like a school play. Amelia spoke slowly, letting words settle like soft snow, and Rosa timed her on her phone, making sure the speech fit within 5 calm minutes. A little girl chasing a kite stopped to listen, then said Amelia sounded kind, and that simple compliment felt like a metal pin to Amelia's chest. Back inside the courthouse, Amelia waited outside courtroom 3, holding her papers close as people shuffled past like hallway traffic during class change. At 1:50, Mr. and Mrs. Clark swept in wearing dark suits, their lawyer trailing behind like a stern shadow. Amelia's knees knocked, but she remembered Jacob telling jokes during thunderstorms to steady her nerves, so she whispered a silly pun about judges judging jelly beans, and her smile returned. When the bailiff called the case, everyone filed into the wood-paneled room that smelled of old books and floor polish, and Amelia took the witness seat, feeling the cushion squeak beneath her. The judge, a woman with gentle wrinkles and curious eyes, asked for simple facts first, the way a teacher begins with easy quiz questions. Amelia explained her marriage, the shared cottage, and the sudden removal of belongings, keeping her sentences clear, like reading directions for assembling a bike. She handed over photos of empty shelves and dirt circles on the floor where furniture had stood, and the judge frowned in concern, tapping a pen against her notes. Mr. Clark's lawyer argued about the family trust, using long words, but the judge stopped him, asking whether Amelia had been given any time to grieve before items were taken. The lawyer stammered like a student caught without homework, and Mrs. Clark's cheeks flushed pink, matching the ribbon on her purse. Amelia felt a wave of strength, the way ocean water lifts a swimmer, and she clarified that she never refused to share memories, only wanted fairness and space to breathe. The judge nodded slowly, then asked about the ring, and Amelia held up her hand, the gold circle gleaming under courtroom lights like sunrise on a dewdrop. She told how Jacob worked double shifts and sold his comics to buy it, and even the bailiff's stern face softened to the story. The judge announced a temporary order, all property to remain untouched, the cottage lease preserved, and the ring to stay with Amelia until final review, words falling like protective shields around her. Relief rushed through Amelia's body, and she almost laughed when Rosa squeezed her shoulder, as if they had just won a relay race. Mr. Clark's lawyer requested an appeal date, but the judge scheduled a formal hearing for next month, advising both sides to seek calm solutions and remember Jacob's love. Outside the courtroom, Mrs. Clark avoided Amelia's gaze, yet Mr. Clark muttered an apology for any distress, sounding like a reluctant student forced to say sorry after playground trouble. Amelia walked down the steps into fresh sunlight, feeling taller than ever, because the law had listened, her voice had carried, and Jacob's ring still warmed her finger like a tiny glowing lantern guiding her home. The next morning, Amelia woke to gray rain sliding down the cottage windows, yet her spirit felt steadier, for yesterday's order now rested over the little house like a sturdy umbrella against fresh storms and sorrow. She brewed hot chocolate in Jacob's scratch saucepan, because sweet cocoa had always been their victory drink after tough days, and the quiet kitchen smelled like hope mixed with melted marshmallows. While sipping, she drafted a polite letter to the Clarks, inviting them to meet with a mediator, since Rosa said talking through a neutral guide could save months of costly court delays. She chose calm words, reminding them Jacob loved seeing people cooperate, and she asked that they treat memories like precious seeds instead of prizes, so everyone could plant them in peace. After printing the letter, Amelia folded it with straight edges, slid it into an envelope, and placed a bright sunflower sticker on the flap, believing cheerful details can soften serious messages. The rain eased as she drove to the post office in Rosa's borrowed car, the windshield wipers squeaking a rhythm that sounded almost like Jacob tapping drumbeats on the steering wheel, keeping his memory steady in motion. Inside the small post office, the clerk weighed the envelope, stamped a tracking number, and wished Amelia luck, noting that fair wishes are free even when postage is not. On the way back, Amelia stopped at the hardware store where Jacob once worked weekends. The manager greeted her, and shelves of nails and paint smelled of metal and pine like old times. She asked if a bulletin board was available for community announcements, then pinned a notice seeking part-time help organizing estate papers, offering payment in cookies or cash, whichever helpers preferred, hoping kindness would multiply. Amelia hoped local teens might volunteer, turning a heavy task into a friendly project, while also letting neighbors learn the truth instead of whispered half-stories swirling around town. By evening, 2 volunteers knocked, Mateo and Lily, schoolmates who remembered Jacob fixing their bikes. They brought spiral notebooks and bright markers ready to color code chaos into order. The trio spread boxes across the living room, sorting photographs, journals, and receipts into piles, while a gentle playlist hummed, keeping the mood light like birdsong after a storm. Mateo labeled a box Camping Memories, and Lily sketched a tiny tent beside the title, making Amelia smile because art on cardboard felt like sunshine painted onto clouds. They discovered Jacob's voice recorder filled with unfinished songs. Amelia pressed play, and warm guitar chords drifted through the room, weaving comfort between stacks of paperwork. Though her eyes watered, she thanked the teens, explaining that every saved memory was a brick in the bridge toward healing, and bridges need many hands to stay strong. After pizza break, they logged serial numbers of electronics the movers took, creating a clear list for the upcoming mediation, so no excuse could blur what belonged where. At sunset, Lily's parents arrived to pick her up, and they offered Amelia fresh apples from their orchard, gestures that tasted like friendship wrapped in crunchy red skin. Mateo stayed longer, helping assemble a spreadsheet on Jacob's laptop, and Amelia felt proud guiding him through simple formulas, realizing grief can teach as well as break. When the clock chimed 9, she thanked him with a box of chocolate chip cookies, and he promised to return Saturday, proving that kindness often circles back quickly. She placed the guitar case beside her bed like a watchful companion, then opened her phone to read supportive text messages Rosa had forwarded from community members, each chirp a firefly lighting grief. One message came from Mr. Bennett, the town librarian, offering to scan photos for digital safekeeping, while another came from Coach Rivera, promising to testify about Jacob's long extra shifts. Amelia replied with grateful emojis, feeling her phone vibrate like a tiny heartbeat of collective care, stronger than the loneliness that once filled the cottage walls. She wrote a quick blog post titled Saving Memories, sharing 3 simple tips for anyone facing unexpected loss, because teaching others amplified her own courage. The post gained 5 comments within an hour, including one from a widow in a nearby town who offered to send paperwork templates she found helpful, expanding the circle of support. Before sleeping, Amelia lit a vanilla candle and whispered goodnight to Jacob, telling him about each small victory, trusting the scent to carry her words into peaceful dreams. She slid the wedding ring off briefly to polish it with a soft cloth, promising herself she would never hand it over unless love itself lost meaning, which she knew could never happen. With the ring shining, she slipped it back on, feeling it hug her finger like a loyal friend, then set an alarm for dawn, ready to keep momentum rolling like steady wheels on smooth road. The next day arrived bright and clear, and Amelia dressed in Jacob's favorite flannel shirt for comfort, then printed extra copies of mediation invite in case the first was ignored. At 10, a delivery truck stopped outside. The driver carried 2 boxes labeled from the Clark family, containing Jacob's comic books and his baseball cap, returned without note. Amelia unpacked them cautiously, relief mixing with suspicion, wondering if kindness or strategy motivated the gesture, yet choosing to record it in her mediation evidence log. She placed the cap on the mantel, wiping dust gently, and tucked the comics into a clean shelf, deciding these items were tiny seeds of possible compromise. Around noon, a letter arrived from the Clark lawyer acknowledging receipt of her mediator suggestion and requesting proposed dates. Amelia smiled, seeing the first crack in their granite stance. She phoned Rosa, who cheered so loudly Amelia held the phone away. Then they selected 2 possible dates and drafted a reply filled with clear courtesy and firm boundaries. After emailing it, Amelia rewarded herself with a lakeside walk, watching geese glide across the water, their V-shaped teamwork reminding her that progress is easiest when everyone rows together. On the path, she met Mrs. Green, Jacob's former teacher, who offered to write an affidavit about Jacob's savings habits, adding another brick to the growing wall of truth. Amelia accepted, realizing her network had become a quilt stitched from many caring hands, each patch brightening the dull gray grief that once covered everything. Back home, she updated her spreadsheet, noting returned items and new witness offers, turning chaos into tidy columns and rows that felt like puzzle pieces locking firmly in place. As moonlight silvered the cottage roof, Amelia checked the mediation folder one last time, satisfied that every document was ready to speak when her voice might shake. She fell asleep under Jacob's quilt, hearing the distant hoot of an owl and feeling guarded by quiet night sounds that seemed to promise tomorrow would bring more progress. She fell asleep dreaming of a courtroom transformed into a bright classroom, where fairness was the final lesson and everyone, even the Clarks, walked away understanding that love is stronger shared than hoarded, and the ring on Amelia's finger gleamed like dawn. Amelia woke early on mediation day, stretching beneath Jacob's quilt while Dawn painted the ceiling peach, and she told herself that courage was a muscle that grew each time it lifted a heavy worry, ready or not. She brewed oatmeal again but added crushed almonds for extra strength, stirring clockwise just as Jacob used to do before fishing trips, and the spoon's gentle clinks sounded like tiny applause in the quiet kitchen. Before leaving, she slipped the polished wedding ring onto a colorful ribbon around her neck, promising it would stay close even if nervous hands fumbled during talks with the Clarks. Rosa arrived wearing her lucky striped scarf and a grin wide enough to calm thunder, praising Amelia's tidy evidence folder as though it were the winning science fair volcano they had built together. They drove through town in Rosa's car, passing shuttered shops whose dark windows reflected their serious faces, reminding them that some battles happen quietly behind glass and paper. At the mediation center, a receptionist with cartoon cat stickers on her laptop offered them warm cocoa, turning the echoing lobby into a friendly living room. The mediator, Ms. Patel, spoke in a voice soft as library pages turning, and said her job was to guide everyone toward a bridge of understanding made from simple truths. Moments later, Mr. and Mrs. Clark entered, their lawyer trailing like a gray cloud, and though their expressions were stiff, Amelia noticed tired shadows under their eyes, hinting at grief matching her own. Ms. Patel invited both families to share memories of Jacob before discussing possessions, explaining that remembering a loved one together can melt ice faster than any legal blowtorch. Amelia began, describing how Jacob fixed a neighbor's roof during a rainstorm and once spent all night repainting the town playground slide, stories that made even Mr. Clark nod in proud agreement. Mrs. Clark added how Jacob sneaked pies from her kitchen to surprise the shelter, and her voice cracked mid-sentence, so Amelia offered a tissue, a small kindness planted in rocky soil. After several shared stories, the room glowed with gentle laughter, and Ms. Patel guided everyone to the item list, starting with a guitar, while they giggled at a photo of baby Jacob smeared in birthday cake. Amelia asked to keep the guitar, promising digital recordings to the family, and Mrs. Clark readily agreed, earning the day's first bright green sticker on Ms. Patel's chart. After 11 cheerful stories, the conference room felt warmer, and Ms. Patel gently steered them to the next topic while everyone chuckled when an old Polaroid showed baby Jacob covered in cake frosting. Amelia asked to keep the guitar that still held Jacob's worn fingerprints while sharing digital recordings with the family, and Mrs. Clark quickly agreed, marking the first compromise of the day and earning Ms. Patel a bright green sticker to place beside that bullet point. Mr. Clark claimed the family trust needed the property to settle debts Jacob owed, but Amelia presented bank statements showing her steady rent payments from their joint account. Ms. Patel paused, asked clarifying questions like a careful gardener pulling weeds, and concluded the legal right to stay rested with the person who actually lived and paid there, clearly Amelia. Amelia agreed but asked for 2 weeks' notice before any visit, so grief would not barge through her door like a storm, and she also promised to bake Mrs. Clark's favorite lemon muffins for the first gathering, hoping sweetness would greet them before hard memories could speak. Mrs. Clark hesitated, fingers tracing her notebook edge, then whispered she missed the blueberry bushes and wanted to bring fresh plants as a gift during the first visit. The offer surprised Amelia because planting together sounded more healing than fighting over furniture, so she accepted and drew a tiny berry beside that note. When discussion reached the wedding ring, the air froze, and Ms. Patel suggested a 5-minute break so emotions could cool like cookies fresh from the oven. In the hallway, Rosa squeezed Amelia's shoulder, reminding her that firm kindness had carried them this far and would hold steady now like a lighthouse in strong wind. Back inside, Ms. Patel asked each side to state what the ring meant. Amelia said love and commitment, while Mr. Clark mentioned family heritage and future generations. Amelia then played Jacob's saved voicemail that called a ring, "My promise to you alone," and the message floated through the room, honest as sunrise. Mrs. Clark dabbed tears and admitted she feared the ring might be lost in an estate sale, not realizing Amelia guarded it with fierce devotion. Ms. Patel offered an unexpected compromise. A jeweler could craft a gold pendant from Jacob's guitar string clasp for the Clarks, while the ring remained with Amelia. The idea felt balanced, like splitting a seed to grow 2 trees, and the Clarks agreed on condition they could choose a memory engraving on the pendant. With major points settled, they traded smaller items, comic books, tools, and baseball caps, each swap adding bricks to their bridge as screwdrivers gleamed after Rosa's quick polish. As they reviewed each comic book, Amelia remembered Jacob reading the colorful pages aloud with dramatic voices, and even the lawyer chuckled when she reenacted a heroic line, proving nostalgia can soften the sharpest negotiation. Finally, Ms. Patel wrote a summary for everyone to sign, pen gliding like a calm river, carving clear banks and turning spoken promises into lasting ink. Before signing, Mr. Clark apologized for the rushed removal of belongings, explaining fear had steered him like a faulty compass, and Amelia offered forgiveness, believing maps mend faster with grace. Outside, sunlight slid across wet sidewalks like melted lemon drops, and a distant bell chimed noon while the smell of fresh-cut grass drifted from the park. Mrs. Clark opened her car trunk and handed Amelia a small box containing Jacob's favorite screwdriver, saying tools should live where they are most used. Amelia thanked her and vowed to tighten the cottage's squeaky door hinges that evening in Jacob's honor, picturing the hinges falling silent so the straight ginger cat visiting the porch would not startle, a tiny ceremony of fixing and gratitude. Rosa and Amelia celebrated with crunchy tacos from a street truck, laughing when salsa dripped like confetti, and even the serious documents in the back seat seemed to smile. Driving home, Amelia lowered the window so spring wind could flutter her hair, imagining laughter mixing with birdsong when new blueberry bushes were planted. That evening, after setting the signed agreement on the mantel beside Jacob's cap, Amelia listened to gentle rain, strummed a quiet chord on his guitar, and whispered that new bridges now carried love across her sorrow. In her dream, the garden bloomed early, blueberry bushes heavy with fruit, each branch holding both laughter and forgiveness, and a skylark song at dawn nudged Amelia awake to greet the first day of a calmer chapter. The sky outside flushed rosy gold, promising that even broken hearts can learn new rhythms. She fell asleep with Jacob's ring warm against her skin, certain tomorrow would bring seeds, soil, and fresh chances for shared healing, while frogs croaked softly by the lake. And as the night deepened, the cottage seemed to breathe with her, each timber whispering that courage, kindness, and careful words had turned sorrow into something. A week after mediation, Amelia woke early to the smell of lilacs drifting through the half-open window, and she felt the day humming like a bright new chapter, already turning its first page, brave and wide. She tied her hair with Jacob's old bandana, striped red and blue, and told her reflection that teamwork would plant hope today deeper than any doubt left in lonely corners of her mind. At 8 o'clock, the Clarks' van rolled up the gravel drive, carrying blueberry bushes packed in burlap and sacks of dark soil rich as chocolate cake batter, fragrant with promise. Mrs. Clark stepped out first, wearing gardening gloves instead of pearls, and smiled a little shaky smile that reminded Amelia of sunshine peeking between clouds after steady rain. Mr. Clark followed, balancing a tray of lemon muffins Amelia baked at dawn, proof that small, sweet gestures can glue cracked trust piece by piece. Rosa arrived next with Mateo, Lily, and 3 more classmates lugging shovels and watering cans, a cheerful troop ready to treat the yard like a living science project. Before digging, Ms. Patel joined via video call on a tablet propped against a flower pot, waving and reminding everyone that shared tasks often grow stronger roots than signed papers alone. Amelia read a short line from Jacob's journal, plant kindness, harvest peace, and the group formed a loose circle, nodding as if the old sentence were fresh morning news worth sharing. They chose a sunny spot near the porch where birds like to perch, marking holes with sticks, and each marker felt like a promise hammered gently into the earth, steady and hopeful. Amelia and Lily dug the first pit, tossing clumps of earth onto a tarp, while Mateo loosened roots on a bush, showing delicate care that made Mrs. Clark whisper a grateful, "Thank you." Mr. Clark knelt beside Rosa, who explained simple watering math, 5 seconds per shrub in cool weather, and he nodded, admitting numbers made more sense when paired with real leaves. As they worked, a robin hopped nearby, tugging a worm free, and everybody paused to watch, sharing a quick laugh that felt like recess on an unexpected sunny school day. When Amelia lowered the first bush, she patted soil around it like tucking a blanket, telling it stories of Jacob's guitar songs so it would feel welcome in its new home. Mrs. Clark sprinkled fertilizer, careful not to waste a grain, and confessed she used to rush chores but now wanted to slow down and respect small living things. The confession floated in the breezy air, gentle and honest, and Amelia answered that she too was learning patience the hard but hopeful way, step by careful step. Between plantings they passed muffins and lemonade, and Mateo pointed out that lemon flavor matched Jacob's favorite silly face, cheeks puffed like a fish whenever something sour surprised him, sparking giggles. The memory sparked laughter that bubbled up louder than lawn mowers down the street, and even the shy ginger cat curled in the porch rail seemed to purr along like a tiny drum. Mid-morning Coach Rivera jogged over with 2 rakes, saying he could not stay long but wished to leave tools and a promise to help build a garden bench on Saturday beside the new bushes. Amelia thanked him, stacking the rakes near a pile of spare boards, imagining Jacob clapping from wherever gentle souls gather to watch good works bloom under the cordial sun. By noon, 6 bushes stood in tidy rows, emerald leaves shining under warm light, and the teenagers posed for a photo, holding thumbs-up signs while Ms. Patel snapped a screenshot from her tablet, beaming. Mr. Clark suggested adding a small plaque honoring Jacob's love for community, and nobody disagreed. They planned to carve it from a cedar scrap in the shed, sanding it smooth together. After lunch, Rosa organized a quick lesson on composting, turning kitchen scraps into food for soil, and even Mrs. Clark chuckled when orange peels squished under her gardening boot like silly stickers. Amelia wrote the steps on a chalk sign. Chop, cover, turn, wait, so kids walking by could learn, believing knowledge multiplies when left in plain sight and shared without price. Lily drew smiling worms beside the words, and Mateo added a cartoon blueberry, artwork that colored the yard brighter than any store-bought banner draped from a tall fence. A breeze carried the smell of lake water, and Amelia closed her eyes, hearing distant waves clap the shore like an audience cheering the tiny saplings standing tall in brave green uniforms. Mr. Bennett, the librarian, arrived with a scanner in his backpack, handing Amelia a flash drive containing digitized photos, explaining that memories, like seeds, need safe backup soil too in case storms come. Amelia promised to copy the files for the Clarks, and they thanked Mr. Bennett, showing how sharing stops grief from locking hearts behind frowning doors and keeps windows wide. In the afternoon, the group assembled the compost bin, following Jacob's scribbled sketch found in an old notebook. Every nail hammered felt like punctuation ending a sentence of long confusion and ache. The teens cheered when the lid fit snugly, and Mrs. Clark placed the first apple core inside, saying even leftovers find new purpose given patience, and a little air stirred daily. As shadows lengthened, Mateo strummed Jacob's guitar, playing soft chords that rose like fireflies in twilight, and people swayed quietly, letting music water roots words could not reach yet. Amelia noticed Mr. Clark wipe his eyes, and she gently offered him the pick Jacob always used, blue plastic shaped like a teardrop, now a small bridge between their matching griefs and hopes. Evening painted the sky orange-pink as the last watering can emptied, and everyone admired tiny droplets clinging to fresh leaves, jewels borrowed from sunset light and simple hard work. Ms. Patel ended the video call with a final reminder. Keep talking, keep tending, because gardens and families both wilt if left alone too long beneath silence. Amelia echoed the advice, scheduling monthly garden days open to neighbors, turning the once private yard into a living classroom built on kindness and welcome. Mateo hopped on his bike to head home, promising to return with paint to finish the compost sign, while Lily stayed to help store shovels, her laughter ringing like shiny bike bells. Rosa hugged Amelia tightly, whispering that progress felt like climbing a hill, panting sometimes, but with a view worth every step when you reach each new turn under honest blue skies. The Clarks lingered last, touching a leafy branch, and Mrs. Clark timidly asked if Amelia could share the blog password so she might post a recipe for blueberry pie once fruit arrived in summer. Amelia agreed, writing the password on a sticky note decorated with doodle berries, thrilled that digital doors could open just as wide as garden gates when friends knocked politely. After the van left, the yard fell peaceful. Fireflies blinked over fresh soil, and the ginger cat curled beside the watering can, content guardian of midnight seedlings whispering gentle dreams. Amelia sat on the porch step, ring glowing against the ribbon, and she whispered thank you to the quiet sky, knowing each shared root would one day weave a canopy strong enough for every heart that gathered there, forever and always. A month later, the garden burst with little green berries, and Amelia woke to find the bushes taller than her knees, proof that quiet care works magic overnight. She marked the calendar because tomorrow was the final court hearing, the last brick in a long wall she and Jacob's memories had built together. Over breakfast, she practiced her statement, reading it aloud to the ginger cat, who flicked his tail as if clapping politely between every point. Rosa arrived carrying a neat binder labeled Truth Tools, packed with affidavits from neighbors, bank ledgers, and the signed mediation notes. They drove to the courthouse under a sky so bright it looked freshly scrubbed, passing kids racing bikes and teachers guiding a field trip toward the museum. Inside, the tall wooden doors felt less frightening than before, almost friendly, because Amelia knew she was not alone anymore. Her courage crowd walked beside her. Mr. and Mrs. Clark greeted her with nods instead of stiff silence, and Amelia noticed Mrs. Clark holding the tiny guitar string pendant Ms. Patel had arranged. The judge took the bench, glasses perched like twin owls, and requested simple language so every fact could stand upright like a pencil on its tip. Rosa presented financial records showing Amelia's steady contributions, each line a breadcrumb leading straight to fairness. Mr. Clark's lawyer no longer argued ownership of the cottage, but asked only for a timeline to retrieve a few heirlooms, showing the ice had finally melted. Amelia agreed as long as each visit came with 24-hour notice, explaining that healed hearts still need gentle handling like wet paint. The judge smiled at the plain honesty and tapped her gavel softly, making a sound that felt more like a school bell ending recess than a thunderclap of punishment. Next came the wedding ring dispute, now barely a spark since the mediation's compromise had already given both sides something precious. Mrs. Clark stood, voice trembling like a violin string, and told the court she trusted Amelia to guard the ring's story, adding she would cherish the pendant as a daily reminder of her son's music. The judge recorded that statement, noting it shone brighter than any diamond under courtroom lights. She then declared the estate settled. Amelia kept the cottage, guitar, and ring. The Clarks received family photographs, a few antique lamps, and visitation rights to the garden. Gavel down, case closed. The words echoed like boots stomping puddles, scattering final worries in playful splashes. Outside, sunlight hit the courthouse steps, and Rosa snapped a photo of Amelia holding the signed order, her grin wide enough to catch half the sky. Mr. Clark approached, offering a handshake that felt steady, and thanked Amelia for teaching him that grief is easier to carry when shared. Amelia replied that Jacob had always said teamwork fixes even squeaky doors, and they both laughed as if those doors swung open right then. On the drive home, Amelia called Mateo and Lily, inviting them for the first blueberry pie lesson scheduled for Saturday. She also texted Ms. Patel a photo of the ruling. Ms. Patel replied with a confetti emoji and the word bloom. Passing the lake, Amelia glanced at ripples shining like tiny mirrors, each glittering spot reflecting how many helpers had held her steady. Back at the cottage, she changed into her garden shoes and headed straight to the bushes, humming the unfinished song from Jacob's recorder. She plucked the first ripe berry, still warm from the sun, and tasted it. The flavor burst sweet and bright, like a small firework of hope on her tongue. The ginger cat prowled between rows, tail straight like a flag of victory, before curling near the compost bin for a nap. Amelia set up a picnic table with blank cards and pens, determined to write thank-you notes before day's end. She began with Rosa, praising her fierce friendship, then penned warm lines to the teens, Coach Rivera, Mr. Bennett, and even the courthouse clerk who stamped papers with patient smiles. For the Clarks, she chose extra-thick stationery decorated with soft blue flowers, writing that the garden's first harvest pie would always have 2 seats saved for them. Clouds drifted overhead like lazy ships, and Amelia imagined Jacob somewhere beyond them, strumming his guitar and nodding to the beat of new beginnings. She opened the laptop to post a blog update titled Courtrooms and Blueberries, explaining how legal victories taste better when sprinkled with community kindness. Comments poured in, neighbors cheering, a teacher asking for field trip tours, and distant readers sharing their own stories of reclaimed rings and healed families. Inspired, Amelia created a tab on the blog called Seeds of Support, offering free templates and simple guides so others could navigate hard journeys without feeling lost. She scheduled her first workshop at the library, confident Rosa would bring cookies and Mr. Bennett would project slides on the big screen. Evening arrived draped in lavender light, and Mateo biked over with cans of bright blue paint to finish the compost sign, whistling Jacob's tune the whole way. Together they added vines and musical notes around Lily's cartoon berry, turning a simple board into a merry billboard of growth. As stars blinked awake, Amelia lit the porch lantern Jacob had fixed long ago, its glow spilling over the fresh plaque Mr. Clark had carved, Jacob's Garden, Where Love Grows. She traced the letters, hearts swelling like sails catching steady wind, and whispered that tomorrow she would start the second verse of Jacob's unfinished song. The ring on its ribbon warmed against her skin, reminding her that circles never really end. They just lead travelers back to the start wiser, kinder, and ready to walk again. And when she finally closed her eyes, the cottage breathed in rhythm with the lake waves, whispering promises of more pies, more music, and endless morning light for any soul brave enough to plant hope in open ground. 2 summers slipped by, and Jacob's garden, once rows of shy bushes, now arched overhead like a small green tunnel where berries, birds, and laughter mingled in bright morning air. Amelia brushed dew from leaves, smiling at balloons tied to fence posts, because today the library field trip would visit, marking the garden's first official community learning day. She set up a picnic table with colored handouts, simple diagrams about compost cycles, fair sharing rules, and ways neighbors could lend tools without hurt feelings. Rosa arrived early with blueberry scones, her striped scarf fluttering like a friendly flag, while Mateo and Lily hauled folding chairs, joking about whose cookies were tastier. The Clarks' van rolled in next, boxes of family photos ready for a traveling memory exhibit Amelia had dreamed up last winter. Mrs. Clark hugged Amelia, a steady squeeze that spoke louder than old court papers about how shared roots can untangle hard knots. Coach Rivera followed, rolling a teal bench engraved with Jacob's song notes, fresh rest for any tired visitor. As the first school bus rumbled up the lane, Amelia checked her lanyard badge that read Guide and Gardener, pride blooming like sunrise on the lake. Children spilled out, wide-eyed at bird feeders made from jars, gasping when the ginger cat strutted by in a tiny bandana, clearly promoted to mascot. Under berry arches, Amelia told how patient watering, honest talk, and fair sharing helped the plants thrive, habits that keep friendships sturdy against storms. At the compost bin, she asked who liked magic tricks, flipping the lid to reveal rich soil made from scraps no one wanted, and hands shot up everywhere. Mrs. Clark knelt to show worm tunnels, her pendant glinting like a small sun, while Mr. Clark passed magnifiers for closer looks. Rosa led kids to the plaque Jacob's Garden, where love grows, recounting how a guitar pick and a ring stitched two grieving households into one bigger, braver family. The visiting judge, off duty, smiled from the path, pleased to see her courtroom order living happily as berry leaves instead of dusty folders. She even autographed legal word puzzles Amelia designed, proving law can be a lantern, not a lock, when words stay plain and hearts stay open. At noon, Lily rang the lunch bell, tables filled with pies, muffins, and Jacob's silly-face sour lemonade. Amelia tapped a glass, launching the first share and repair fair, where neighbors swapped seeds, mended clothes, and printed free legal checklists from Rosa's laptop. She thanked every helper. When Jacob's name rose, wind rustled leaves like soft applause, making ring and pendant sparkle in the sun. Mateo strummed Jacob's guitar, and Amelia sang the new second verse she wrote about turning pain into bridges. Voices joined until melody floated across the lake. Boats waved back, proving music travels farther than fences. Mr. Bennett unveiled a kiosk of scanned town history. Children dragged parents to swipe through photos linking street names to real faces. Amelia noticed shy Nora, whose family lost their home in a fire, staring at the guitar. She guided Nora's hands to safe strings, and a sweet chord earned gentle cheers. When shadows stretched long, Coach Rivera and the teens unveiled the teal bench beside the berries, dedicating it as reading nook and thinking spot. Amelia screwed a brass badge onto the armrest. Sit, share, heal, using Jacob's favorite screwdriver, clicks echoing like celebratory snaps. Miss Patel arrived with seed packets, announcing a plan for mediation centers to build peace plots, gardens where disputing parties can dig and talk side by side. Amelia promised to write a kid-friendly starter guide with diagrams and blank pages for each community's own stories and recipes. Sunset painted the sky peach gold as visitors left with seeds in pockets and photos and phones, their heads buzzing with backyard ideas. Rosa stacked chairs, and Mrs. Clark washed pie plates, both laughing over suds that smelled like citrus promise. Mr. Clark coiled hoses with Coach Rivera, trading dad jokes about squirrels forming unions, while teens plotted a mural of dancing vegetables for the compost lid. Fireflies blinked over bushes as quiet settled like a soft blanket, brighter, bolder, undeniably hopeful. Amelia sat on the teal bench, ribbon and ring warm over her heartbeat, noting courage really did grow stronger every time it lifted a heavy worry. She recalled Jacob grinning when he first planted blueberries. Sure, birds would steal half, yet happy to give away what remained. Now the berries fed busloads of kids, healed arguments, and inspired new legal gardens, proving Jacob's gentle math. Love shared equals love multiplied. She texted Jacob's old number, a digital journal, writing that the garden, the song, and every mended heart were blooming beyond his sweetest dreams. Hitting send felt like tossing a pebble into a pond, trusting ripples to reach somewhere unseen but important. The cottage glowed in dusky light. Amelia whispered thanks for turning papers and pain into petals and pathways. She picked 3 berries, one for tomorrow's Robin, one for the ginger cat now curled on the porch rail, and one for herself, a midnight snack of triumph. Ring brushing her heart, she closed the door, certain every sunrise would bring new chances to teach, to mend, and to watch green tunnels of kindness reach for the sky. In the hush, she heard lake waves and distant owl hoots, nature's lullaby promising steady tomorrows. And under that promise, Amelia slept peacefully, knowing Jacob's love had seeded a garden big enough for every brave heart to bloom.